There are two public comment points in our meeting. Members of the public who are here in person and would like to make a comment should submit a speaker card to Ms. Lisa Smith. Those attending on Zoom who'd like to speak can use the raise hands feature on Zoom screen. We also ask accepted comments by email before the meeting. At our January Metro Plan Orlando board meeting, I reported on the concerns expressed here last month over the electric charging stations that was going to be a part of I-4 charging facilities. The comment had come up and we wanted to make sure that those stations were adequate to charge and fastly. Right, Mr. O'Hanlon? On Monday of this week, I chaired a CAC new member selection committee, and we produced a slate of 5 candidates to send to the Metro Plan Orlando board for approval of its March meeting. Ms. Horn is still working on notifying these members and preparing the fact sheet for the board meeting. So we don't have the names to share with you at this point. We will advise you of the slate before the board meets on March 8th. At this point, I'd like to recognize Ms. Cynthia Lambert. She's going to tell us about all these goodies at our desk.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, you might notice some new things at your places. So last month, we challenged you all to share our annual report, and you guys came through amazingly. So you are the winners of the committee challenge, and these are your prizes. So thank you very much. We really appreciate you sharing the information with your networks and helping educate your communities. To be honest, I knew you guys were going to win all along. Not that I'm playing favorites, but want to recognize a few of you. So Patricia C., Cynthia, both the Jeffs, Dan and Maria were some of the folks who shared. I hope I didn't miss anybody. If I did, please let me know. But we really appreciate you guys and wanted to express our appreciation. So enjoy your cookies, and Miriam's going to tell you how to use your fun bracelets. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lambert.
Yes, thank you, Cynthia. And Mr. Chair, if I may, we've already had a question about the blue item, and I wanted to show you, and we can all do this together. You see there's a little black piece that sticks out there. Now you pull that down and you get this. This has been a runaway favorite at all of our public outreach events recently. And I wanted to also let you know that that this little flashing bracelet, I have an extra bag up here. So if you need more than the one provided to accommodate a certain number of children or grandchildren, I can hook you up. Not a problem. I know some of you were thinking like, oh, which one am I going to give it to? No. We can accommodate the whole family. We've got like about 2,000 of these things in the storeroom, so not a problem. Enjoy.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Ms. Mary Ann Horn for our agenda review.
Thank you, Chair Campbell. Committee members, all those attending in the room and online, we appreciate that you are here. In this format, we need a quorum, which is now 13 members in the room to conduct votes. As always, it is important to RSVP for meetings so that we can prepare. There are still Zoom and YouTube options available for the public. I wanted to introduce, I think, a couple of people who are here with us today. First of all, Mr. John Scarf, would you stand up? Mr. Scarf is our new FDOT liaison, and I chatted with him beforehand. I told him that on occasion, the CAC will have questions. And
I've been forewarned.
Yeah, and you see that he has a thick pad of paper to take notes, and so I believe that we were all ready to go with that. So thank you, Mr. Scarf. It's a pleasure to have you. We look forward to working with you. Also, I believe we were expecting a guest from the Florida Department of Health in Seminole County. Yes, would you stand up, please? This is Ms. Patricia Mondragon, and she is here today. Ms. Venice White, a member, was not able to be here in person. She's monitoring online, And one of her colleagues has come to just sit in with us, and we're happy to have her here as well. And when you leave, be sure and scoop up Miss White's goodies there, and you can take those back to her. And you'll note that there's 2 cookies, so you can handle that however you want. All right, so welcome. Glad to have you both with us. I wanted to remind you guys about our active transportation plan, Ride and Stride 2050 survey. This survey is open until March 10th. The bilingual survey and separate comment map are meant to help us develop our plan for walking and biking safety in Central Florida. They will feed into our 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So now that you have shown your abilities to share like champions, keep it up. We would love to have more responses to this ATP survey. That data is going to be instrumental in building our 2050 plan. Those of you who participated in last month's Sunshine Law refresher, we'll see at your places a certificate for that. Yes, and thank you all for being here for that. And Miss White, in fact, was the one who asked that we have the certificates, and so I'm happy someone will be able to take hers to her. We have some happy staff news to report. Happy staff news. Sarah Larson, a transportation planner here, who has presented to this committee before, most particularly on the strategic health plan. She and her husband welcomed their first child, James, on January the 28th. And wait, there is a CAC connection, as there always is. The on-call doctor attending at the time was Dr. Elizabeth El Badri. Sound familiar? Dr. El Badri is the sister-in-law of our former CAC chairwoman. So you see, all roads lead to the CAC, and bike paths and walking trails. We have no actual changes to today's printed agenda, except I wanted to note that on the agenda item for Ms. Taylor Lorent's presentation about the safety grant, I believe I arbitrarily shortened the name of the grant. It is the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. I think I got that right. Now I would like to ask Ms. Lisa Smith to please call the roll.
Good morning. And the members that are joining us virtually, if you could please unmute yourselves for the roll call. Bobinger,
Here.
Bosley,
Present.
Buttery, Campbell,
Present.
Coleman,
Present.
Cologne, Council, Davis, Henry, Lopez, Mormon,
Present.
Mott,
Present.
Mueller,
Present.
Niesman, O'Hanlon, Peters,
Present.
Pigram,
Present.
Pizzo,
Present.
Rumpf,
Present.
Dallas,
Present.
Shaw, Stevens, Sabilla, Webster,
Present.
White. Mr. Chair, that concludes the roll call, and we do have a quorum physically present.
Excellent. I was concerned about that up front, but I knew we'd come through. We always do. And also welcome again to all of our guests. We're now here public comments on action items. Do we have anyone online who'd like to speak to any of the items? If so, please use the raise hand function on your screen or press *9 on your phone keypad. When your name is called, the host will unmute your microphone. You will see a button pop up that says the host wants to unmute you. Accept the prompt to activate the microphone. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record. And please hold your comments to 2 minutes. Are there any comments at this time?
There are no hands raised on the virtual side, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do we have anyone present in the boardroom today who'd wish to make a comment on action items?
I have not received any requests.
Were there any written comments submitted before the meeting?
Mr. Chair, we did not receive any written comments before the meeting.
Okay, well, we have two action items today. We'll ask for a motion and a second, then open the floor for discussion. Members making or seconding a motion, please state your name for the record. Our first action item is the approval of our CAC minutes from our January 25th meeting in 2023. Those in tab 1. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposes? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank
Can
you.
Repeat the name of the motion maker and second.
The motion maker was Webster. And the second?
We both did it.
Pe-
You can take it.
Solid Flash Peters.
All right, okay, good. Got 'em? We're good. Our next item is the recommendation that the TIP be amended to include several projects. Mr. Jason Satorio of Metro Plan Orlando staff will provide information. Mr. Satorio, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Jason Sartorio, Transportation Planner with Metro Plan Orlando. This morning, I have one tip amendment for you. Additional information regarding this amendment is located in tab 2 of your agenda packets. Today's amendment is due to construction cost estimate increases for the Fortune Road and Simpson Road intersection improvement project in Osceola County. As I mentioned earlier, additional information is located in tab 2 of your agendas. With that being said, unless there are any additional questions, we are asking for your recommendation of approval of the amendment. Thank you.
We have a first.
Second.
We have a second. Mr. Mueller. Any further discussion? Any questions? Hearing none. Again.
You have one.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Good morning. Just in the description of those cost estimates going up, if it's, the wording talks about its effect, it's what the industry is experiencing nationwide. At this point, are we still making these adjustments on a case-by-case basis, or is the entire future program being baselined accordingly with how pricing is coming in now? Like, or we just know that future projects are underestimated now, and we'll have to just address those one by one later.
I'll let Alex answer.
I'll give you the short answer. Good morning, Alex Stronger. We're in current year, so some of the projects as they're coming to bid and as the construction estimate packages for the LAP program have to be rectified before they go out to bid. That's kind of what you're seeing with this particular project. Projects in 24, 25, 26, kind of the second through fourth year of the work program. We made adjustments earlier this year with FDOT, kind of increasing kind of an inflation factor within the state standard. We're using the same inflation standards that CFX and the Turnpike Enterprise are using. So we actually increased what we normally inflate to, but yeah, really unprecedented times. So we're project by project in some cases, but we did a kind of program-wide update earlier this year, which absorbed a lot of our reserve funds that we had in future years.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Satorio?
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Coleman.
I just want to know, does this have an impact on when this project will be completed?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And I also don't see a date about a completion date.
That I do not know. This FDOT do not have it on hand. We did not have that on hand.
So yeah, I'll just let you know. So this project, the next step is actually for it to actually go out for advertisement for contractors to go out to bid.
Yes.
So once that happens, that kind of opens up the period. I'd like to think construction would start in the next 6 to 8 months. But if you kind of check in with once that next step and the construction bids are in and that contractor is selected, that's really when you'll start to see a construction schedule start day, when you'll start to see the barricades and when you
Oh,
can
the orange
expect to
cones.
be completed. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really all normal. That's the normal
Exactly.
process.
We're in a state right now where for this particular project, it's about to go, it's a LAP project. So this is a state and federally funded and locally funded project. But because it's state and federally funded, it has to go to local, it has to go through the local government procurement process, which is really the next step. So after this gets dialed in, we'll update RTIP, the state work program, and then the state will be working with Osceola County to get this project off the ground.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, with that, we're ready to vote. All in favor? Any opposes? Hearing none, motion carries. Mrs. Satorio, you're doing great.
Thank you.
We knew you had big shoes to fill, right? You're doing great. Thank you so much. Okay, today we have 4 presentations. If you have a question for the presenter, please stand your nameplate on the end. We will call on those with questions at the end of the presentations. Our first presentation is an update on the region's application for federal Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. Ms. Taylor Laurent from Metro Plan Orlando staff will share some of the good news about this. Ms. Laurent, you have our attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I am very excited to give this update to us today. So our application was submitted last September, and we were notified just at the beginning of this month that our application was selected, and we have been awarded $3.79 million of funding to assist us with the development of Vision Zero safety action plans throughout our region, which is really good news.
Great news.
Yes, very much so. So what we're going to do with that funding is exactly what we identified in our application. We're going to develop one overall regional plan, 3 county plans, and 19 city or town plans. That way we can have a holistic top-down and bottom-up identification of safety projects that we would like to move forward with. So as we're looking at each of these different jurisdictions, there will be a similar methodology applied to how we're going to put these plans together, as you can see on the slide. But ultimately, at the end, each of our participating jurisdiction will have a qualified Vision Zero safety action plan that will allow them to apply for implementation discretionary grant funding in the future. So it's the key to hopefully get more dollars as we move to implement the projects that we identify. And I know we're all excited to get started. There's a few things that we're going to do before the work begins. So right now, Metro Plan Orlando staff are developing a project management plan so we can coordinate the effort to do all 23 of these plans simultaneously. And while we're working on that, we're also working with the US DOT to execute a grant agreement so we can receive those funds and get that notice to proceed and get work started. We're going to be asking our local partners in our jurisdictions to establish their local agency champion or their main point of contact. So as soon as we're ready to go, we know who to reach out to and work can begin and move forward. With that, there will be more information that we have available by the Vulnerable Users Safety Working Group meeting, which will be on March 21st. So we'll have a little more information at that time to share with everyone. So if you're interested, please tune in. Otherwise, I can answer any questions you have now. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Great news. Okay, questions? We'll start over with Ms. Mao.
Just a comment. Thank you. Just want to express my gratitude for the hard work that you all put in there into getting this. Thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. Mr. Pigram, is your card just up from the last question?
Yes.
All right. I can't see a couple cards in the back, so any questions back there? Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Hamilton. Next, we have a presentation from Mr. Eric Hill from Metro Plan Orlando staff, who will give us an update on the region's traffic signal retiming program. An information sheet is in your packet and in tab 3. Mr. Hill. Good morning.
Hi, microphone.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee
Morning.
members. Thank you for the introduction, Mr. O'Hanlon. So traffic signal retiming. when we talk about technology, this is perhaps the one bit of technology everyone encounters. Everyone encounters a traffic signal, and they always complain about it. It's red, doesn't let me out on my side street. And so to address some of those concerns, we do an annual retiming program. So I'm going to give you the results of the retiming updates we did last year. And we are currently underway with this year's retiming as well. So why do we do it? We want to improve traffic flow. We want to reduce the delay at intersections. We want to reduce speeding as much as we can. We also want to be mindful of the other modes, especially bicyclists and pedestrians. We want to make crossing intersections a little bit more safer, and allow them to cross intersections. Sometimes you may get to an intersection if you're a pedestrian and you can't get across because the signal is too long or you don't have enough time to cross. So this year, and you'll see in your packet there, let me see the message slide. Okay, I wanted to point out, yeah, we did 17 quarters this past year, including 7 intersections. So these are the locations in Orange County that we did retiming on. You see the blue are the quarters, and then the diamonds are the intersections. Here are the ones we did in Seminole County. And we did not do any retiming in Osceola County. We open this up annually and we allow the jurisdictions to submit quarters that they want retimed. We don't always get submission from all the jurisdictions that control their traffic signals. So this past year, we didn't get any from Osceola County. A little bit of history, technology, again, it evolves, it changes. And when we started this program, we were using floating cars. And that meant someone would sit in a car and ride along with a stopwatch and get the time that it would take to travel a particular corridor. We then moved to Bluetooth technology in 2011. And then we started evaluating it using Bluetooth technology in 2013. We eventually started doing testing with connected vehicles, which already have technology in them that we can track. And that's what we're using now. We'll probably be using into the future in the near term for sure. So as we were going through that transition of going from the Bluetooth to connected vehicles, we were doing some testing just to verify that using that form would be consistent with what we were using in the past. So we did do some tests with Bluetooth in Seminole County and used the automated traffic signal performance measures just to test to make sure that vehicles were arriving at intersections on red, just to show progressions, show where bottlenecks are, etc. So we did make that transition, and now we're using connected vehicle technology, and we did show proof of concept, and that's what we will be using again in the future. So some of the things that we want to observe or at least collect data on: travel time, reliability, progressions in the corridor, emissions, fuel savings, intersection delay, pedestrian delay. So 59% of the corridors now have shorter travel times. 94% of them have reliable travel times. We have 870 tons of CO2 emissions this year. This is an increase, and there's a reason why. I'll get to that. Increased fuel consumption. 35% of the cars now have motorist stop and fuel times. 29% individual intersections have less intersection delay during the peak period. 15% of the intersections have less pedestrian delay during the peak period. So this is what we use, just the big picture, benefit cost summary. So we had travel time increase this past year. Our present value is $5.9 million over 3 years. And total cost of the program, we normally spend roughly $1 million each year with this retiming effort. Now the BC ratio, we have a negative. And for now, last month, I used a phrase that wasn't accepted by this committee, but seasoned members of this committee will recall that we typically have a positive BC ratio, but we don't. But some may also recall that whenever I would give this presentation, I would always say we may not always have these numbers like this because it's going to vary. And this is the first year where we had a negative. So here's a perspective on what I just said. And part of that is because there's only so much we're going to get out of a retirement efforts. And it's going to vary because travel behavior changes. I used to use Sunrail as an example. When Sunrail came into existence, traffic went from north-south to east-west for access to the stations. And certainly the pandemic played into this. So we have 4 quarters where we had travel time increases over 30 seconds, which caused the overall program BC ratio to be negative. And here are the quarters that are listed that had those increases. But why did this happen? The pandemic, when we collected before data, it was during the pandemic or towards the end of the pandemic. And then when we did the after calculations, we had an increase in people going back to work, getting back on the road. So we have more vehicles to account for. We increased the pedestrian times to cross intersections, which created more delays. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it does drive the numbers in a negative direction. We did a lot of retiming near schools, just for safety reasons. And we rely on citizen complaints as also a measure, qualitative measure. And that has decreased. So when we do this retiming, we're trying to balance several things here. And we're not always going to meet them all, but they all certainly come into play with how the results come out. So that's the report, Mr. Chairman, and I am certainly open to questions and welcome your continued support of the program.
Thank you. You always do a great job of bringing that to us each year. We have no cards raised over here. Mr. O'Hanlon. Mr. O'Hanlon, you're recognized.
Whatever traffic data we collected in 2021 and 2022, unfortunately, is going to be really skewed. So we just need to keep in the back of our minds that, you know, we really can't make that many decisions based on that 3 years worth of data, because generally it's not steady state. And to not make decisions on data that's not steady state is not good decision making. So, and I can see you've experienced some of that here, but it's really a bigger issue for all studies, Turnpike, everybody, FDOT and us.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. O'Hanlon and I, we have a review every morning before the CAC meeting. He stops by my office and shares his wisdom with me, and I try and carry it forward.
I've always kind of observed it as a system of checks and balances. Good check and good balance.
I mean, his reference to our conversation earlier. I just wanted everyone to be aware of that.
Mr. Pegram, you're recognized.
Oh, I was going to defer that.
So we're going to finish this slide off, then we're going to come over
Thank you for your presentation. I think one of the corridors that I drive every single day was in your Orange County list. I think it was corridor 6. So I was curious on that. I've actually had to call in that corridor a couple times to 311. Some of it has been signal malfunctions that I alluded to in the last meeting of just, I think, mechanical or electrical issues where the controller is seeing things that don't actually exist. But the north end of that corridor, or near the northern end, is where it intersects with Sand Lake. And so I've had to call that in a couple times because the northbound movement of Apopka Vineland has a queue that has gone a mile long, and I measured it on Google Maps, and it's the only movement in that corridor that has mile long. Everything else is served within one cycle. But I understand, like, when we do these corridor retimings, the balance there is trying to make sure Sand Lake doesn't cascade backwards towards I-4 or the whole thing implodes. But so I didn't know if you could kind of talk about, you look at a corridor in one direction, but there's a whole bunch of other components that you may have one direction that we've improved, but it's cascaded in these other corridors that we can't really disserve.
Yeah, and that's it. It's a balancing act. And some corridors have improvements. The side roads may have longer delays. And you pointed out, if we correct one particular corridor, it may impact another corridor like Sand Lake Road. But you said northbound, is it PM or did you say AM or PM?
Northbound.
PM.
So I think the intent there is the westbound Sand Lake movement is the priority to draw people away from I-4 and that wonderful intersection that's going to be under construction for a number of years. But right now, the northbound Apopka movement, I think my 311s have made some adjustments, but I don't know like if when this retiming was done compared to some of that feedback, that citizen complaint as you categorized it.
Thank you, Mr. Beagle. All set? Ms. Webster.
There was a note about air quality negative. I think it was emissions. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, that's because of the delay.
Say what?
The delay that we had on certain corridors, that's a function of that. That as well as the increase in fuel consumption, because we had more delay on certain intersections or corridors. Those are cars that are just sitting, creating that emission, creating fuel consumption. That's part of it. Typically, we have a decrease because we're moving vehicles. And one of the things that I've been sharing with some of these engineers and vendors is, we need to do more in terms of being mindful of pedestrians. If we're going to be mindful of pedestrians being able to cross, then that's going to mean that vehicles are going to have to be delayed. Also, there are, and I failed to point this out, the schools, the number of schools that we were doing retiming in those corridors, again, contributed to all of that. So, we're trying to meet every measurement we can. We can't always get them all. But we try and
Some
do the best
good
we
and
can.
some bad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Mott, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great presentation, Mr. Hill. I'm curious as to why Osceola County did not submit anything. When I was reviewing this reviewing the information over the weekend, that's something that stuck out to me. Now, I understand, I appreciate and respect not micromanagement, not micromanaging a situation. So I understand you all have to deal with what's presented to you. But with the understanding that there's so much chaos in Osceola County, and even our representatives here on the committee, they oftentimes complain about the traffic backup, and most of us are aware of all the chaos going on in Osceola County. Can you help reconcile for me, like, their rationale for not submitting anything with the fact that there's trouble going on down there?
Well, I can't speak for them.
Understood.
But I can get an answer for you.
Okay.
And I will provide it to the committee. That's a fair question. I don't have an answer, but I will get an answer for you.
Okay, thank you. And just also just a second question is, in the past, how many have we had situations where counties have not submitted requests for timings? Because as the understanding is timing makes stuff go better. So it seems like with all the growth that's going on, that counties would be jumping onto this opportunity to submit time.
Yeah, it's not always counties. Some of the jurisdictions also submit orders to be retimed, like City of Winter Park, they
Right.
control their traffic signals.
Right.
For a number of years, the City of Apopka, which
Right.
controls their traffic signals, didn't submit any
Okay.
cars. And, we would go to them and say, can you?
Why?
They just weren't interested in having any time. I mean, that's up to them. But they have now, they've started to submit intersections and corridors. So that has happened in the past. But I think your main concern is why Osceola County didn't submit any.
Yeah,
And
just
so,
curious.
again, I'll get in
You
there.
get that? Okay, thank you. That concludes my question.
Great observation though, Ms. Mott. Mr. Coleman, did you have a?
Thank you, Chairman. No, she asked my question.
Oh, okay.
And
Great
Great.
minds think alike.
thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that.
I have a follow-up question after the timing. What about the ITS systems? Why aren't they automatically kind of retimed? I mean, it seems to me like that's what intelligent transportation systems should be analyzing on a regular basis and therefore have a current list that says, hey, we could have an advantage for that, because that would be what facilities management or facility GIS type of information could be giving you. It seems like this seems to be very ad hoc and not streamlined by now. It should, in my opinion,
Yeah.
seems like it can be.
Yeah, we are moving in that direction, and there are some roadways, some corridors that have the software in them that responds to demand. The one that comes to mind most quickly is iDrive. There's a portion of iDrive that has, it used to be called the Scoop technology. I'm not sure what they call it now, but that's one roadway that has that software that responds to demand. And you're correct. That's where we're going. That's the direction we're going. But there's still bugs that need to be ironed out.
So you're saying there's bugs in the software to get the timing correctly?
No, just to make sure it's consistent.
Okay.
And so that we don't, Mr. Pegram, he left, but his question about, okay, you fix this one, what about this road?
Right.
And since we are a region and we have certain roadways that transverse the entire region, we want to make sure that one area that's fixed is not causing another problem. But you're certainly correct in your statement that we need to do more and rely more on that.
All right, thank you. I mean, I guess we're just wanting to know when that will likely happen for everybody, because it's a flow system and our electric works that way, so.
Yeah, and I gave you an update on our TISMO master plan last month. That would certainly be part of the discussion that we have.
Okay, good. Okay, Ms. Webster, Ms. Moore, everybody good over here? Mr. Hill? Thank you so.
Vito's had the computerized thing for probably 3 years at this point. It works phenomenal,
Yeah,
but it only does a mile stretch of road.
sure.
When you got to integrate all of Central Florida, I just can't even fathom the size computer program to do that. I do want to mention that recently the intersection of 417 and 426 and Tuscarora Road has become almost untenable because of the timing of the lights.
Okay.
So if you could somehow look into what can be done there, it's an atrocity right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Mr. Hill? Thank you.
You are.
Great job. Next, Mr. Mike Wilson of Metro Plan Orlando staff will talk to us about the ongoing tracking and analyzing of bicycle and pedestrian counts around our region. Mr.
Thank you,
Wilson?
Mr. Chairman. and
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I want to give you a little overview on what we've been doing over the years with pedestrian bicycle counts and some of the results that we're getting out of our program now. Basically, I'll give you a little bit of history, how just as with the signal retiming, technology has changed. Well, technology has improved on the bike and pedestrian counts as well. Talk about what we're doing currently with the mile vision system and show you some of the outcomes from that. And so Yeah, historically, we had to start off just like kind of like Eric was saying, someone with a stopwatch in the car. Well, similarly, we'd have somebody sit on a corner and watch pedestrians and bicyclists. It's very accurate, but it's also very expensive if you're using paid people. We typically would use volunteers just once a year for some snapshot counts. So a very limited program, but it was what we were able to do at the time, as you can see back around 2014 and 15. The next step was using eco counters. These are infrared counters. Any warm body that goes by, it will pick up. But the problem is you can't do that in mixed traffic because it would also pick up an automobile with its heat signature. So it's very limited as to where you can count. You can count on trails and on sidewalks. You can't count bicyclists, for example, on the roadway, and it can't discern between bicyclists and pedestrians. But again, we had a couple of years of using those and getting at least a mix of what's happening on the sidewalk system. So what we've moved to now and have had for a few years now is this Mile Vision system where it's a video camera. As you can see, it's pole mounted. We can deploy this out in the field on a temporary basis. We typically do a 48-hour count. And it pulls that video data in, and then we upload it to the Mile Vision system where they take artificial intelligence to actually identify the pedestrians and bicyclists that are visible within that field. So as I said, it's portable. It does also have a Bluetooth reader, which will pick up like passing vehicles, because this actually does count all modes. We've just been using it for pedestrian and bicycle counts. It's also capable of doing turning movements at intersections. Our focus has primarily been looking at the linear movement of pedestrians and cyclists along streets. And as I say, it can differentiate because it's video. It can also give us the important thing on a bicycling side, the direction of traffic, because we know what we learned is that cyclists going against the flow have a much higher crash risk. And because it's video, we can count the number of bicyclists who are using the roadway as opposed to using a sidewalk or a path. So historically, what we started off with was a detailed bikeway crash risk analysis. I presented on that a couple of years ago, where we compared streets with and without designated bike lanes and looked at how many cyclists were using travel lanes, the bike lanes, the sidewalks, and then looked at the crash data that was associated with that. More recently, we've been looking at doing baseline counts where we know projects are going to be coming in, whether it's a complete streets project or a side path project, and then also doing some individual paths, ones that perhaps we didn't count earlier on. Maybe we don't have a baseline, but at least now we've got some idea of the usage of those facilities. This year, we are now starting to get some of those follow-up counts where we had the baseline count, and now we get to see what happens after the facility is installed. We're still doing some additional baseline counts because we know we do still have more projects coming down the pipeline. Starting to use the data for pedestrian safety analysis, getting that kind of exposure data. We've also been looking at how the counts relate to our context classification, the type of land use that's associated, as well as more like socioeconomic or equity analysis zones. And you'll see that in the data coming up here. All of this data is stored on the web, so it's available. We can provide a link to anyone who's interested in viewing the data, and you can go in and look at a specific site and see the details of where it was located and download the actual count data and whatever you'd like to do with it. Give you some idea of some of the counts. So for example, this is comparing streets with and without bike lanes or side paths and looking at the numbers of pedestrians and cyclists. I call out Central Boulevard because it's such an outlier in this Central Boulevard downtown Orlando, such an outlier among all the other counts that it really kind of skewed that section of streets that just have sidewalks without any bike facility. But you get a sense there of the usage. We can look at it by context class. You know, that Central Boulevard, while it is technically in a C5 urban context, it probably has a count that's more suitable for C6, which is the urban core. So that's why it's kind of an outlier and sort of skews that. But again, you can see that as we move up in context classification, as we get more urban, as we would expect, we get higher counts. We can also, like I say, look at the equity areas. So they're in blue. Those are lower income minority areas, whereas the ones in orange are more affluent areas. And so again, Central kind of skews that because it's in the downtown area where you've got a lot of apartments and higher income. So what we're doing is we're putting out more counts in so that we can kind of, because when we placed the counters out there, we weren't looking specifically for this type of data, but now we see the value of it. We can go and flesh out with additional counts to balance out the locations of those counting of the different context classifications. Here's the same equity areas for bicyclists. And what's interesting here is that you see for the equity areas, the number of cyclists actually goes up as it gets more suburban, while for non-equity areas, it's the reverse. And an interesting trend there. Again, just indicative of as the areas are more suburban, things are more spread out, that lends itself more toward a bicycle trip than a pedestrian trip because the trip distances. We're also able to look at, again, by equity areas, looking at how many % of the cyclists are using the roadway as opposed to using the sidewalk. And again, we saw a difference there with the fewer cyclists using the roadway, whether there was a bike lane there or not, in the equity areas versus the non-equity. So there's so much more that we can do with this. I would just wanted to give you a taste of the data. And so now that we can, tie this to other big data that we have, we can get a much better picture of what's going on with cyclists and pedestrians in our region. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Well, I was going to say, let's start over here. I don't see any cards raised. Oh, yes, Ms. Meyer. Oh, no?
Okay.
You want me to start over here and then come back to you? Okay. All right. So we're all good over here? Mr. Mueller.
So Mike, great information. Thanks for sharing it. It's really, really good to hear. So the one question I have is, we get a lot, we've got these counts, but how does that relate to roads that could be used by pedestrians and cyclists, but aren't because they're not suitable for pedestrians and cyclists? And I mean, what I'm saying is, you could have a high car traffic road, right? Mm-hmm. That's used a lot. It's a major thoroughfare, but you don't get a lot of pedestrians and cyclists on it because they just don't feel safe on the road. So how do these counts relate in with that? Because it sounds like we're just counting purely numbers of people on the road. And so how do we improve those other roads by using this data?
Well, what we actually found is actually the reverse of what you just described, that as the number of vehicles go up, actually the number of bicyclists and pedestrians do as well. And that's simply because that's where the destinations are. That's where people need to go. Roads that have a lot of motor vehicle traffic, they have businesses, they have apartments, they have retail, they have transit, and all of those things then result in having more pedestrians and cyclists as well. So the question for us then is, knowing that we have that, how do we improve that environment? Not so much to encourage more use, because that's already where the greatest use is, but how do we improve the safety for those people who are already out there?
Mr. Bobinger, you're recognized.
Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. Going back on a couple slides, I'm trying to understand the differential between non-equity and equity. And I mean, I'd like to hear some definitions of those, because I listened to it and
Mhm.
it kind of sets me off a little bit because I'm going,
Mhm.
what do you mean non-equity? And I heard non-equity somewhat connected to lower income. So that's a little disturbing, just title wise, because if you look at some of the lower income areas in Orlando, you're gonna see a lot more people walking and riding bikes versus in cars. I mean, just because of they don't have the income to ride in the bus, they're riding a bike, they're walking any way they can to make money, get to work. And of all places, those would be the places that we need to have sidewalks. We need to have bike paths. We need to establish that they have a safe means to get back and forth to what they need to do to support their families. But I mean, the information is there. It's just trying to understand the different definitions of these two categories because they're a little off for me.
Well, I'm not involved in the development of that analysis. But what I can tell you is it is obviously there's income, there's also race. And I don't know if anyone else has any, if there are other factors. Cynthia, I think you've been involved in.
I do have more information for you on that. So these equity areas come out of our non-discrimination plan. They're defined in there. So they do include income, but they also include minority population, our aging populations, so over 65, people with disabilities, zero car households, limited English proficiency persons, and female head of household with children. So those are kind of all we layer those on top of each other and we look at what the scores are for the different areas. So if we have a large concentration of these different populations in an area, then the higher the score, that would be classified as an equity area. So that's kind of how we define it. And we're actually getting ready to launch a process to create a regional equity plan where we're going to relook at this definition and kind of redefine and make sure that we're aligned with some of the new federal guidance that has come out along these lines. So you'll be hearing more about that in the future.
Thank you.
Good. Ms. Pizzo, you're recognized.
Thank you. And my great presentation, my question, and maybe my colleagues have asked this in so many words, but with all this data, how are we using it and who's using it to better improve overall the area? I'd like to hear that.
Well, really still at the beginning on that, but it is starting to inform some of our decision-making with our active transportation because of some of the things that are somewhat counterintuitive, like as Mr. Muller was pointing out, that yeah, we actually have more pedestrians and cyclists on busy roads, not fewer. That that then does present a quandary for us. How do we address our approach, looking at how much of it is promoting the use of walking and cycling and how much of it is making those who are already out there safer. So as I said, just still at the early days, because while we've got a fair amount of data, it's still nowhere near what we would have for automobile use. So it's a process.
Mr. O'Hanlon.
Would like to congratulate everybody here. My wife and I went to Nashville for her 60th birthday. And that's in Tennessee. And Florida does such a great job on the roads here. Tennessee may be in second place. They do a great job. And we're big bicycle pedestrian people. So we walked all over Nashville. I was in disbelief compared to here, the lack of sidewalks to places that you wanted to go. We are doing a phenomenal job here. There's almost sidewalks where anybody wants to go. Not that there's not missing segments, there are. But you compare us to other great states and we're just so far ahead. So thank you.
So big congratulations. Thank you.
Oh,
okay, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Okay, we all set? Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Finally, we have Ms. Catalina Chacon from FDOT District 5 staff, who will give us a presentation on the updates to the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate project.
Good
Chacon, you
morning.
have our attention.
Good morning, everyone. Catalina Chacon with FDOT. I was probably here, I've been here several times. I think the last time I was here was back in fall of last year, where we gave you an update and I told you that we were gonna come back and let you know the possible steps moving forward. And there's been new developments. I don't know, for those of you who haven't heard, the governor made a big announcement probably a couple of weeks ago now about an initiative called Moving Florida Forward, which I am going to talk about at the very end of my presentation. But it is very fitting, and we are extremely happy that he announced this because it's going to allow us to continue to build I-4. So my agenda today: background, traffic assessment, project development, and next steps. So background, you've probably seen this slide multiple times, but this is just a map overall that shows you I-4 in gray in the middle. So that's the section that's open to traffic with the express lanes two express lanes in each direction. And then we have what we call the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate, an extension to the north that will be in Seminole and Volusia County. And then an extension to the south of I-4 Ultimate, and that will be in Orange, Osceola, and Polk County. And we know we need, I-4 is the backbone of Central Florida. It is your number one priority. It is our number one priority. And one of the biggest one of the challenges that we face is the funding. So we've been looking at ways to do a phased approach to meet the operational needs with the available funding. That's what we've been doing a lot. So this just shows you what that phase approach looks like in Orange County. So we have a series of projects we have the funding that has been secured, and these projects are either going to construction very soon or are in the active procurement phase to move to construction. So the first project going from the top to the bottom, it's the I-4 at Sand Lake Road interchange. So that project is probably going to start construction very soon, summer, if not earlier. It is going to reconstruct the interchange of Sand Lake Road and I-4. And we're also going to be including an express lane that is going to connect I-4 Ultimate going westbound all the way to west of 536. The next project down the slide is the 528 ramp widening. Right now, if you're coming from downtown Orlando and you want to go to the airport, that is a single lane ramp, and we're proposing to widen it to a dual lane ramp to provide additional capacity that is needed. The next project in purple is the I-4 at Darrell Carter interchange improvement, and that is currently under construction. It's gonna make the existing overpass an actual interchange. 3 out of the 4 legs will be built with this project. The 4th leg being the westbound on-ramp will be built at a later time when we come back and do the rest of the mainline improvements on I-4. And then finally, we have the I-4 at 535 interchange improvements. That is improving the interchange, half portion of the interchange at 535. And then the project on the left-hand side, the green project, is what I mentioned earlier. We're extending a single westbound express lane that's going to go basically from I-4 Ultimate all the way to west of 536. And this slide just shows you that because we have multiple projects, multiple contractors, it gets very challenging when they have to work on top of each other. So we had to break the construction phase of the single westbound express lane into multiple projects for each of the different contractors in the area. What is going on in Osceola County? So we have several projects that are ongoing in Osceola County. The Champions Gate project, the interchange that was recently, I think we had a ribbon cutting event last week, I believe. We also have the auxiliary lanes that go from Champions Gate going north to 429 that are being built right now. We have our regular maintenance projects that mill and resurface the existing roadway going on as well in Osceola County. So going back to what, I was here last time, like we've been looking at ways, how to advance I-4, where are those needs that, I-4 has? So we looked at traffic. That's basically going to tell us what are the worst areas. And we all know there are many areas that need to be upgraded on I-4, but we needed to prioritize because we don't have unlimited funding. So we evaluated the data for the north extension of I-4 beyond the ultimate, so in Seminole and Volusia County. And then we also looked at the south sections. That will be Orange, Osceola, and Polk County. And we looked at during the morning, the afternoon, the weekends. Is there a pattern? What can we tell with this traffic data? So we created what we call heat maps to show the areas of slow speeds. And then we also wanted to see if this was a reoccurring congestion that happened due to a special event or just the weekends, or it was a frequent congestion. And then after that, we identified the areas that we wanted to focus to improve. So to not surprise to any of us, this is on the left-hand side, you have basically the colors are speeds. There is a bar at the very bottom that shows the speed. So red is bad and green is good. So if you read the bar, the chart on the left-hand side is is westbound direction. So coming from Orlando, going south towards Polk County. And we translated this graphic into a map on the right-hand side to better read what we're trying to tell with this information. But to no surprise to any of us, there is significant reoccurring congestion, which is the red, specifically in the areas of Osceola Parkway, going westbound or south to 429, or in the area of the Champions Gate area. And this was in 2022, weekdays between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. And I wanted to also point out that the source of this data that we collected is from FHWA National Data Set, and it uses time and location information collected anonymously from fleet vehicles equipped with mobile devices. So basically tells you if you're like slow, stopped, moving along I-4. Then we looked at a Friday afternoon. So Friday between 3 and 7 p.m. And it basically is the same picture. You still have severe congestion in the westbound direction between Osceola Parkway and 429. And then we also looked at the weekend. It gets less red, but none of the less is still pretty red. So still a lot of congestion. And we see it every day, every morning, all the time. Then we also looked in the eastbound direction on the south. So the eastbound, what we observed, it was definitely more green, but we still have congestion between going eastbound, so going the opposite direction between Stereo 536 and just south of Central Florida Parkway. That was, this was the weekday between 3 and 7 p.m. And then a Friday, very similar picture. And then the weekend, very similar picture. So what are our findings? So as I mentioned, we have many needs for I-4. I-4 is the backbone of Central Florida. So there is a lot of users, but the focus area that we identified from this traffic data was the segment through Osceola County. Basically, that entire segment of Osceola County experiences severe reoccurring congestion. Is not due to a special event, it's all the time. And then we also found reoccurring congestion on the eastbound direction from 536 to Central Florida Parkway. So what is our plan? And what I said, you'll see at the end that when the governor announced this, we were very excited about this because we said, what we need to do is we need to find a way to move forward the Osceola County section of I-4 beyond the ultimate. So this is our focus area. And I had this slide a few years ago when I told you we were working on what can we do. And so this is what we've been calling a value engineering approach to I-4 beyond the ultimate, when we're trying to find ways to break out the project to see what we can move forward to get it built. So we still use those principles. We are looking at, is there any ways that we can do things differently, efficient, and still meet the goals of the project. So we looked at all of these items that are listed here, new parameters that we have, basically when it comes to the separation of the express lanes with the general use lanes, any lessons learned from other big projects that we have in the area, what can we do? And then our evaluation approach was, like I mentioned, we needed to maintain the purpose and need that was already established when we first did the project development and environment study, or the PD&E study. We wanted to stay within the I-4 right away that was already identified. So we did not want to go beyond that right away. And we want to provide similar or better traffic operations, see if we can come up with cost savings ideas, and identify sources of funding. So through that evaluation and through our traffic data analysis that I just went through, this is what we're proposing for Osceola County. So it is consistent with the PD&E study for the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate. One of the biggest changes that you'll see is what we call the buffer separation. So you're looking at the proposed typical section in Osceola County. You have 3 general use lanes in each direction, which is what I-4 has right now. And then you also have auxiliary lanes. These auxiliary lanes are basically when you get on and on ramp, and then you get off that section of extra lane. That's what is called an auxiliary lane. You have 2 express lanes in each direction, separated by tubular markers, as you can see in the picture. And then we also have the rail corridor in the median of I-4. So the biggest takeaway from this slide is the use of the buffer separation that translates to about 36 feet of reduced typical section, which reduces pavement, concrete barrier wall, and it translates to cost savings. It's easier to construct. It gives us more flexibility for emergency operations and first responders to serve any vehicles or any incidents in the express lanes. It is more widely accepted nationwide and is definitely utilized throughout Florida these days. So what is our project development? We're proposing to build the section of I-4 Beyond the Ultimate in Osceola County. Those limits are from County Road 532 to State Road 536. And it includes the interchanges listed here on the screen. So you have 429, which is a future project that the Turnpike also is working on. It's called the Poinciana Parkway Extension Connector. It includes World Drive, 417, US 92, and Osceola Parkway, and 536. And as you saw in the picture before, it includes 2 express lanes in each direction. Now we needed to, so the green is the Osceola County section, but we also needed to connect or transition back to what's on either side. So we are also going to look at the orange pieces on either end of the green. So we're going to have to include a transition to the south or Polk County, and then a transition to the north to I-4 Ultimate. And the transition to the north and I-4 Ultimate you're looking at the proposed typical section. So as I mentioned at the very early beginning of my presentation, we're building a single westbound express lane. What we're proposing to do is in Osceola County, we'll build the 2 express lanes, but we will have to connect to I-4 Ultimate in the eastbound direction. And we're proposing it to do another single eastbound express lane to connect to I-4 Ultimate. If we don't provide this connectivity, the express lane, you're going to lose customers in the express lanes, which then we cannot remove those vehicles from the general use lanes and improve the capacity on I-4. So we have to provide that connectivity. This is showing a picture of the Turnpikes project. It's a new interchange that they're proposing with 429, and it's going to connect towards Poinciana Parkway towards the south, and is going to alleviate traffic in Osceola County significantly. So we're coordinating closely with the Turnpike to make sure that our projects are matching up to each other. So what are our next steps? We're gonna definitely be coming back to MetroPlan and all of the stakeholders on the area that encompass the limits of I-4 Beyond the Ultimate. We're gonna continue our partnership with the ongoing and planned projects, which are listed on the screen. So Poinciana Parkway Extension with the Turnpike, I-4 at US 27 interchange with District 1. Old Lake Wilson Road, Osceola County has a project that is going to widen Old Lake Wilson Road, as well as Brightline. We're gonna also secure funding and then evaluate design, sequencing, and delivery options to build this project. And then I listed the agencies that we have to coordinate with to move forward on the project. So this slide just shows that initiative that the Governor Ron DeSantis announced on January 30th, the Moving Florida Forward Infrastructure Initiative. And as you can see on the screen, it basically the proposal proposes to invest an additional $7 billion to prioritize and accelerate the completion of 20 critical transportation infrastructure projects across the state. And this is okay, that's fine. There's a video there. If it doesn't work, it's okay. It's 1 minute long, but it was part of the announcement that the governor made. This is the map of all those 20 projects that the governor announced during his announcement on January 20th. So they're throughout the entire state of Florida, but as you can see, within the region of District 5 specifically, I think we have combined about $3 billion. This is the Osceola County piece, $1.4 billion. And construction will commence as early as 2024. So we're moving fast. It's a big challenge, but we're ready to take on the challenge. You also have the extension to the south, so we have to transition back to what's existing out there. So this is $635 million along I-4 from US 27 to Champions Gate. And then you have the Poinciana Parkway Extension Connector. This is the $1.3 billion project that is going to provide that connectivity from Osceola Parkway, Poinciana Parkway, apologies, to I-4. And this is just the last slide that shows all of the projects and the title of each project. I believe that's all I have. So sorry, it was a lengthy presentation.
All right.
But I could take any questions that you might
That
have.
was very good, and thank you very much. I think the last time you came before this committee, there was a lot of passionate questions and discussion. You promised to come back. So I want you to know that we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Ms. Salas, we'll start right here. We'll start right here and then we'll go this way. I promise I will get them all. Everyone.
The barriers that you showed there, they look like they're basically staying still. They're not like dynamic. There's no way to move or increase those things. And I think I've seen in in Miami and other states, they have those cool concrete barriers that are able to like move and change and increase the lanes as the traffic is congested in one way or another. And they do that a lot. Even they use emergency lanes in the northeast, when it's very congested, they open those up. It seems to me like if we just cement everything and make it like that, we don't have any ability to move or increase lanes as the congestion comes and goes. Because clearly it's there are peak and hours and off hours. So there's no way to really kind of think about those types of strategies in this.
So I believe they're called reversible lanes, something like that. We have definitely looked early when we were developing this project. We looked into that with the severe congestion that we experience. We definitely are going to need the 2 express lanes basically at all times in Osceola County. So the difference is, and I'm going to point at that screen. There's 3 screens, and I'm going to go with that one. These are basically tubular markers. You have probably seen them in Miami. That down south is where they use them, because what it does is if you introduce a barrier wall here, like if we were to put this barrier wall in the median here, we have to provide 12 feet of shoulder offset, basically, so a vehicle doesn't hit it, because that's a hazard. So the ability, one of the, and it's listed here, basically it reduces the footprint. When they first came out in South Florida several years ago, people will drive on top of them to get into the express lanes. And before the tall gantry was there, they will get off. We have then since re-engineered those tubular markers. They're sturdier. The spacing between them is more often to discourage that. And I mean, if you drive through them, you're gonna damage your car. So and this wall here on either end or either side of the I-4, we need that wall because as you can see here, we're gonna elevate I-4 when we come and we reconstruct I-4. So and that's to stay within the right of way of I-4. If we were to remove this wall here on the outside, on either of the outside, that means we have to tie in to existing natural grade with a slope. And that makes our footprint wider, and we might not have the right of way to do that. So that's why we use the walls to get tighter and be able to stay within our right of way.
Ms. Webster.
Yes, within these corridors that you've been talking about, are there any updates to the possibility of rail development there? I know there are some corridors that are designated for rail, but we've also heard that they may be used otherwise. So can you just give us some updates on the progress with rail?
Yes, absolutely. And I know that there's ongoing conversations, and the way we work, we have different people, representing the department. So I do know that DOT were part of the Sunshine Corridor, and I believe that corridor is looking for Sunrail or commuter rail to extend from the airport to the convention center area. So in our map here, I'm going to point to that one so you can see the green segment in Osceola County. That's where I was, that my slide showed that we preserve a rail envelope in the median. So you could see it right there in the median of I-4. We're going to preserve a rail envelope for a rail, Brightline, or whatever is going to come down the median of I-4. That's in Osceola County. So that's in the green section of that map. In the orange, and actually, I'm sorry, and at the very bottom, the other orange at the very end of the page, we also have the same typical section. So we have a rail envelope in the median of I-4 through the green and down to Polk County. In Orange County, within the orange section, it's that rail envelope. Where is it? Oh, hold on, let me get to my slide. That rail envelope is gonna be in the east side of the alignment of I-4. And it's shown here that there's still room to accommodate whatever happens with those conversations with all the stakeholders that are interested. So within the right of way of I-4 from 528, basically, because that's basically where the convention center is, we are accommodating for future rail, and we are in active discussions. I know my leadership is in active discussions as part of the Sunshine Corridor.
And that includes rail going on to Tampa at some point in time?
Yes, yeah. So within the limits of District 5, where we are here, we go all the way to Polk County. We are preserving accommodations for future rail. And I do know that in District 1, which is the Polk County that goes all the way to Tampa, they're also part of these conversations.
Thank you. I did see about Polk County being added in the news.
Yes.
Ms. Mormon, Ms. Mott, Ms. Coleman. Sound good? Okay. Mr. Pegram, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Two quick questions. I know beyond I-4 Ultimate had a unique funding and implementation structure. How is the department using the funding from the state to accomplish the timeline that has been set? I'm curious as to what's being approached differently compared to the original I-4. And the second one being, I believe most of the right of way that you're talking about is within the jurisdiction of the South Florida Water Management District. who is looking at innovative ways to manage stormwater where they mechanically drop the level of the ponds before a major storm event, which could reduce the amount of land you need for stormwater and means less environmental impacts. So I'm wondering if there's an opportunity between this major investment that is going to require large stormwater ponds and what South Florida is looking at doing, not only in a response to Ian, but other major events to reduce the amount of land you need for stormwater. So just thought maybe there's some synergy there if the department hasn't already identified that opportunity.
Yeah, great question. So your funding question, great question. I failed to mention, or maybe I did mention, so this has to go through the legislative process, and legislative session starts March 7th. I believe there has already been conversations. There are already conversations ongoing about this funding that was proposed. There is the third bullet there basically explains kind of like the setup of the funding. So there is 4 billion of general revenue funding. So that's, if you will, cash, like that's just available funding that we have. But we have innovative ways to elevate the 4 billion to 7 billion. That's the total of all those 20 projects that were listed here. So that will be some sort. So I4Ultimate was a P3 partnership. I am not sure exactly what that's gonna come out like. So I don't want to tell you now yes or no, but I do know that we're gonna be able to leverage the 4 billion in general revenue to get us to the 7 billion. Those are probably the conversations that are going to happen during the legislative session. And then when they end, at the beginning of our work of our fiscal year in July, we're going to realize what exactly is going to look like. So more to come on that. And then the right of way for South Florida Water Management District. I honestly haven't heard about that. That is a very interesting concept because yes, with all the amount of water that we get during those storm events, we've seen it. I mean, those are like very large storm events that I don't even know what's the number of years that we designed for. So I will definitely have to get back on you on that one to talk to our drainage and permitting people. We are in active conversations with South Florida Water Management District because we need permits from them for our ponds. Absolutely. So we are in active conversations with, and we've always been coordinating with them to get our permits. So I'll definitely have to get back with you on that one.
Okay, let's do Mr. Peters next.
Thank you, sir. I know the need to alleviate some of the concerns on I-4. I mean, very high priority, especially in Osceola area. But I'm concerned about the department's intention to do something on the eastern section. That is from 434 to the Volusia County line. Many of my neighbors are really asking me questions about the department's intention to do something to alleviate the traffic problems there. What is the department planning to do?
Great question. So we did look at, when we looked at this traffic data, we looked at both north and south. Yes, I do realize I came from the Berry this morning. That's where I live, and I feel the congestion too. So it is everywhere. We're growing too fast. But that is one of our biggest challenges. So now that the funding picture looks more secure on the south, we've been working also on the north, and I could come back for an update to tell you what we've seen. And we have the same heat maps for the north. I could come back and I think Secretary Tyler during the board meeting offered that. But one of the challenges will be the funding, right? So right now in the north, we don't have anything, but we could start looking at those priorities. We know that in Dirksen interchange is the choke point, if you will, coming down from Volusia County, coming down to Orlando. That will be like the first project that we probably need to build in Volusia County to start helping alleviate the congestion. But
right now, yes, but I-4 in its entirety is our priority. It is just a very challenging balancing act with funding, with the operational needs, but we have not forgotten in Seminole and Volusia County. It is right now the challenge is that we don't currently have funding. We have, the only funding that we have on the north is right-of-way funding in Seminole County. But Volusia County, we don't currently, right now, we don't have any, but we are looking at ways to do the phase approach, if you will. That's how we were able to start building on the south in Orange County, breaking it up because the project size gets smaller, so it gives us better ability to get the funding. So we're doing the same thing on the north, and I can come back and it's not our only challenge, but one of our biggest challenges is always the funding, that we don't have unlimited resource, funding sources. That how do we prioritize? But we have not forgotten about, we have needs everywhere on I-4.
Good question, Mr. Peter. Okay, Ms. Pizzo, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good presentation, Catalina. I'm looking at my notes. I'm scattered all over the place, so bear with me. First, you're talking about it being an elevated footprint in Osceola County. And that, of course, would include the rail corridor being elevated. So north of that, I saw where the rail corridor was on the east side of I-4. So you're going to have to get over I-4 or under I-4 to get back into the center.
I'm not sure how, but yes, we will have the alignment of the rail will have to shift at one point. And those are the conversations we meet monthly, if not more often, with Brightline right now, because that is the entity that's interested in doing rail in this area. So we had a meeting with them last Thursday. And we try to, how do we coordinate with each other, but we are doing that. And yes, they will have to shift at one point along I-4 to the median I-4 from the outside to the inside.
Critter crossings.
We have some in Osceola County. Off the top of my head, I don't recall where, but I know there is one in Osceola County, Judy. I could get that to you.
Because this is going to be an awesome barrier for any of the creatures wanting to go east to west or west to east. Or
we do have an animal crossing somewhere in Osceola. Right now, I cannot remember where it is.
Okay, and you already talked about Volusia. I'm looking at the numbers, just the 4 billion general revenue funding and then the 3 billion over the next 4 years. We're looking at $16 billion, and that doesn't include the 7 billion that the governor has promised from somewhere. Just for folks being a transportation planner, what does that break down per mile? Just curious what this costs us per mile. I used to know that number, but
I don't know that.
It's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of money. And then my last question is, where is that 7 billion coming from? Did the governor share?
So it's 3 billion from
You had said 3 billion over the next 4 years. Well, that's 12 billion.
No, it's a total of 7 billion.
Okay.
And 4 out of the 7 are general revenue funding with innovative transportation project financing strategies to leverage an additional 3 billion.
Okay.
Total of 7.
I misunderstood.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
sorry. It's financing is complicated. Okay.
Mr. O'Hanlon.
Well, I think this has just been a celebratory morning. I just think of the hundreds of thousands of people who go through hell every day on this section of road. This is just a miracle for all of those people. And I think it's actually going to lead into an economic boom for Central Florida, because so much business does not take place because people refuse to drive that road right now. So thank you for the update.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, Ms. Norman.
For that, the area around I-4 Sand Lake Road, when did you say that construction was beginning?
I could get the exact time, but so we already have a contractor on board.
we already executed that contract, I think summer, but I believe it's earlier than that. I might say spring. I could get the exact time.
I thought I heard you mention summer, and
Yeah.
my concern was just that that's when the peak tourist season
Yeah.
comes in. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure why they're starting it
Yeah.
during that time period versus waiting until like August
Yeah.
to do it, because, you know, the amount of traffic that comes through there, the congestion that already exists, doesn't make any sense to do construction when we have those tourists coming in.
I think it's summer, but I will confirm. I don't want to give you misinformation.
Thank you.
Yes.
Catalina, thank you for your expertise. Great job. Okay. And that concludes our presentations. Yes, that deserves one. Okay, there are several items under General Information tab 4 in your agenda packets. Our next in-person CAC meeting will be on April 26th. So we don't meet in March. We're on spring break. Okay. And the CAC meeting dates throughout the rest of the year listed in your agendas. Please remember to RSVP. We need to know that we're going to have you here. Okay. The next Metro Plan Orlando board meeting will be on March 8th. At this time, do we have any committee members who'd like to make final comments? Please indicate by turning your card up and you will be recognized. Okay, seeing none. We now have come to the second public comment period. If any members of the public wish to comment and are joining us virtually, please use the raise hand function and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll send you a prompt to unmute your microphone. After you are recognized, please state your name and address for the record and hold your comments to 2 minutes. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment?
There are no hands raised on the virtual side, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do we have any members of the public attending in person who wish to make a comment?
I have not received any.
Were there any written comments submitted before the meeting?
Mr. Chair, we did not receive any written comments in advance of this meeting.
Okay, with that, I want to say thank you for the committee members for being here. For the ones that are online, we'll thank you for them as well. But remember, if you're online, you cannot vote for us. You cannot help us with the quorum unless you're in the boardroom. Okay, thank you to everyone at the staff here at Metro Plan, our guests that came in today to help us through this, and a special thanks to Ms. Marianne Horn next to me. She always makes this seamless.
Let me know if you need any more bracelets.
And with that, I would declare that we are adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Marianne, I will take you up on your offer.